So last summer, I found myself in a bit of a predicament. One afternoon, I was going to go out for a run, and at the same time that I was going to go for a run, my family, they were going to go and run some errands, right? And we were going to go our separate ways, and we left the house about the same time, but I got back to the house before they did, and there was nobody there, and as I walked up to the garage door, I tried to get it to open, and there was some kind of mechanical malfunction that the garage door wouldn't open, and I found myself locked out of my house. I didn't have keys on me or anything like that. And so I called Becky, and she came back with the kids, and she had a key, and I suddenly found myself in a really weird situation. See, you might be in the same kind of situation where when you go to your house, you go home, you don't usually use the garage, or you don't usually use the front door, right? Most of us, if you have a garage, we enter into the garage door, and we don't think anything about it. Well, because we are in such a habit of doing that, I failed to remember that the people who lived in the house before us had put in these certain kinds of locks that, like when you have a hotel, if you go to a hotel room and the last lock that you latch at the top that kind of, the door can open a little bit, but it won't open all the way. Yeah, so we have those on both of our front door and our back door. So it didn't matter even if I had a key to be able to get in to the house. And so I had to call my dad up and ask him for some special tools, and we decided to focus on the back door, and you can only imagine what we had to do to eventually finally get into our house. But it's interesting, the door, right? The door into the house is pretty important. It's the doorway into the place where we do family time, where we do life together as a family, where special moments happen for us. For a lot of us, the doorway is the entryway to the place we call home. And sometimes, really, if we think about it, sometimes it's within the walls of where we call home that we find shelter and relief from the chaos and the world that surrounds us, the chaos of our lives, our everyday lives. There's nothing like coming home, walking through the door. Chaos. There is a lot of chaos in our world today. I've found some funny videos online that I've come across from time to time in the last couple of weeks. There's this one of this lady, I don't even know who she is, where she's pretending like she's having a news conference in her living room because there's so much confusion, right? Like there's so many things that we are and we aren't supposed to be doing during this time. And it reminds me like don't go out unless you need to, right? Don't go to the store unless you need to buy something. And don't wear a mask unless you're breathing. I don't know, some really strange things. And don't get me wrong. It's meant to be funny. And I know that this is a very serious situation. There are people who are losing their lives and are very, very sick. But there's also a lot of information and misinformation around out there, right? Like, it leaves us looking and listening and searching for the right answers, the right voices to follow. Because we're looking for ways. We're looking for ways to reopen, to restart. And we're looking for ways to live healthy, whole lives, to get back to a quality of life again. But because of the unknown, we have to be careful. Because more than just our lives are at stake, the lives of friends and family and fellow human beings. So we look and we listen for the voices that will lead us to life. Like really, right? And we do this even when there isn't a pandemic. We are constantly looking and listening and searching for what will give our lives meaning. We pour our lives into careers and families and sports, classes and personal development. We look for ways to find identity. We look for others who share our ideas. We bond with like-minded people who are in pursuit of like-minded fulfillments. All of it in search of what will meet our deepest needs. And sometimes we turn to substances Sometimes we turn to dark places and dark mindsets. Sometimes we turn to busyness, or we fill our lives with materialism and are consumed by greed. But really, here it is. We are searching for healing from a different kind of invisible disease. See, sin is an invisible disease that causes visible damage in our lives. The visible damage is found in broken relationships. It's found in self-destructive actions that not only hurt us, but are like a ripple effect to the lives around us. And see, the disease of sin is what has caused the unhinged mess in our world. Listen, the disease of sin is at the heart of what drives our selfishness. But see, this is the good news of why Easter is important, why this whole idea and really why Jesus coming back to life matters. See, the love of God for us is what can heal the deep wounds of our souls. And God has given us what it takes to heal the disease of sin in our lives. Jesus is God's true revelation of what love is, a love so powerful that it calls us to a different way of life, a love so overwhelming that it can literally change the trajectory of our lives. Not only that, but there is power in this love to change the lives of those around us. Think about that for a moment. That the one who showed up thousands of years ago actually can make that kind of change in us even today. Jesus is the key to turning the tide against the deadly disease of sin. But at the heart of why Jesus is the key, the central driving factor, the overwhelming ingredients is love. Listen to what Jesus says in the remaining moments he has before he goes to the cross. See, on the night before Jesus died, he gives his followers, his disciples, a new command. And I love this. This is found in John chapter 13, verse 34. It says, "So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." See, some versions say, by your love, right? By your love, people will know. But I like the word prove, right? The proof of our love for Jesus is found in how we love each other. The proof of whether Jesus is alive, whether we really believe Jesus is who he says he is. The proof of whether or not we really believe God sent Jesus as the one who could lead us to what it really means to be truly human, is found in love. And what we do with this love matters. See, the love of Jesus is so powerful that it defines everything it impacts. See, it convinces those who see it. And Jesus points toward it as evidence of him. But on the other side, right? Like if it proves who Jesus is, then it also can expose this. This love also exposes selfishness, which is a direct result of the disease of sin, right? We talked about that earlier. Love exposes the fake, the ulterior motives that oftentimes are found by those who lead us away from God's purpose for our lives. See, Jesus' love exposes the crippling effect of a hypocritical life. And the religious leaders of Jesus' day, you see, they used their power and position to hold burdens over people's lives. They added so many rules for people to live by that instead of helping people know God, it hurt them. They became consumed with who was in and who was out, and they tried to find ways to keep people out. They wanted to use the power of religion to control people. And when Jesus steps into the scene, it throws the whole machine into a mess. It was so bad that the people who were controlled by this mindset even had a hard time seeing Jesus. See, no one ever wants to be on the wrong side of power if they can help it. And as far as many of them were concerned, what if Jesus was wrong? That's why we talked about this a few weeks ago. In the book of John, chapter 9, there's a story about a blind man who had been blind since he was born. And Jesus comes across him, and they have this encounter with each other, and the man wants to be healed from his blindness. So Jesus takes and spits into some dirt and creates some mud and puts it on his eyes, and he tells him to go to a temple pool in that area and to wash himself and wash off the mud. And when the guy does it, he can suddenly see. When news about this spread to some of those religious leaders we were talking about, when they saw what had happened and they heard what had happened, they interrogated the man, right? They wanted to know how this happened because apparently it happened on a holy day when it wasn't supposed to happen. But really what they were trying to do was to figure out how they could catch Jesus. So they bring this guy in, they interrogate him. And instead of celebrating what had happened in his life, instead of being happy for him, instead of using this as a way to see who Jesus really was, they used it to try to push Jesus out even more. And they began by pushing the man who had been healed from blindness, pushing him out of the community. They had missed the whole point. See, basically, they kicked the guy out of the faith community because he gave credit to Jesus. Jesus comes and finds the guy. And there's this powerful moment where the guy realizes who Jesus is. Listen to this now. The voice of the one who healed his blindness now leads him to healing for his soul. The man now sees that Jesus is the one who had come to make things right between humankind and creation and God. So out of that blind man's story experience, Jesus lays down some identifiers to make it clear about who he is. And he makes it clear about the difference between himself and those who use God and religion for the wrong purposes. And part of it is to make it very clear that he is different. He is a different voice. He is revealing the truth about what humankind is searching for. Listen to what he says here in John chapter 10. This follows that whole situation between the man who he healed from blindness and the Pharisees, those religious leaders. He says in John chapter 10, verse 1, I tell you the truth. Anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. But the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, and he has gathered his flock, his own flock. He walks ahead of them, and they follow him because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger. They will run from him because they don't know his voice. Those who heard Jesus use this illustration didn't understand what he meant. So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. Jesus says, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. There's a spot that's about 2.5 miles from my house I like to run to. It's up on this hill where I can actually see uptown, downtown, whatever we call it here in Charlotte, uptown Charlotte. I can look out, and it's in Pineville, and I can see over all the trees in the distance the skyline. I love it. It's like one of my favorite places. And there's a couple of ways that I can run to get there. I can run on up a little ways and go around a really, really windy road that is quite dangerous. It's not my favorite thing to run on. Or I can go up a little further and cut over through a neighborhood to get to it. And this neighborhood has a gate on one side of it. The reason I like to go up through this neighborhood is because on one side of the neighborhood is a gate that I know there's not going to be a ton of traffic coming in and out of, and I can run through the neighborhood and make it pretty safely to the spot where I can look out and see the skyline of Charlotte. But it's interesting. If you've ever lived in a neighborhood that has a gate, there's lots of different reasons why people have, neighborhoods have these gates. But this particular neighborhood has a gate that is meant to control traffic flow, right? Because on the other side of the neighborhood, there is no gate. So you can come and go as you need to. It's really not a gate that's meant to keep people out. It's meant to control the amount of traffic. Because people know that to use a neighborhood to get to the other side, sometimes people won't pay attention to the speed limit. They won't pay attention to the surroundings. They have their mind set on just getting through. Interesting, this story, this analogy that Jesus uses to talk about himself as the gate. See, looking at those religious leaders that Jesus had just tangled with over the man that he healed from blindness, they were pretending to be the gatekeepers. And somewhere along the way, their pursuit of a type of a perfect or a type of even holiness that they prescribed to, it turned into self-righteousness, where they became consumed with their own power. And they were abusing their people. They were leading people away from God's true desire for their lives. See, they lost sight of God's holiness and exchanged it for their own self-righteousness. Clearly, in the story of the man who was blind, they were completely consumed with missing the point, right? Instead of being happy for him, because he could finally see, they simply revealed their blindness, blinded by their hate for Jesus. They were the ones who were consumed with trying to keep people out. They were the ones who were trying to even push Jesus out. They were so convinced and focused that they couldn't even allow their minds to be opened to who Jesus was. And see, in this statement that Jesus makes in John 10, he's making it clear that the game was over. He was making it clear that the voice of the one who God had sent was his voice. And now, those who have been blinded by the disease of sin have a way to find healing by listening to the voice of Jesus. And the truth is that sometimes before we can see, we have to hear. See, the path to a new life and a new hope and a new future goes through Jesus. Jesus is the gate, but it's not a gate that is a gate that is trying to keep people out who are hearing his voice calling or who are looking for him. Jesus is not trying to keep as many people out as possible, but it's the opposite. This is a gate that is inviting all of humankind into it. So, see, with those who refuse to accept Jesus, who essentially were refusing God's love revealed in Jesus, they were the ones trying to steal and kill. Just like what they did with the blind man. And ultimately, what they tried to do with Jesus by having him killed. See, Jesus is the one who is willing to lay his life down to protect from the true finality of death. When we accept his love, when we allow his love to become what we are known for, when we enter a new life found in Jesus, defined by Jesus, defined by God's love, when we do this, Jesus is willing to protect our faith, our hope, our future, if we'll trust him with it. That's what the gate does. That's what the door does. It protects what is behind it. Even if we lose everything, even in the midst of living selflessly, we can still have our lives because we know who we have given our lives to. We know who will keep us close to his heart because he loves us. And that's the difference. See, Jesus is literally offering this love and acceptance of the very God who created, who gave us life to begin with. It is this love that is drawing us. And I'm telling you right now, this is where the treasure of faith is. A love that knows us and does not reject us. A love that leads to forgiveness. A love that will help us even in the mess that we think we could never get out of. It's not too great for this love. I've said it so many times. God's love is enough. We can stop chasing after the things that we think will fill us, the things that we think will satisfy us. That's where Jesus leads us. That's where God's love leads us. Maybe this pandemic has given us the opportunity to stop and reevaluate. Maybe it's a chance for us to actually pay attention to what's most important. What might the voice of God be saying to you in all the chaos? Listen to what these words say in 1 John 4, 7 through 12. Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love. See, God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins, right? To heal us from the disease of sin. Dear friends, since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love each other. No one has ever seen God. But if we love each other, God lives in us and his love is brought to full expression in us. There it is. There's the proof, right? The proof of God's existence, the proof that Jesus is alive is found through love, a life-changing love. See, the secret to a full and satisfying life is found in the unconditional love of God. This is where Jesus leads to. This is what it means to come live inside the protection of the gate. Because in this love, it's not that we won't be impacted by the unhinged hurt and mess around us in the world, but this love is deeply satisfying and sustaining. This love will protect our innermost existence. This love can lead us home. It can lead us home when we find our souls lost and wandering. I want us to move into a time of reflection. This is a time where I want to invite you to get into like a mindset of prayer or meditation. I want to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes wherever you're participating, unless you're driving. Don't close your eyes. But I want you to hear. I want you to hear God speaking. I want you to reflect on maybe something you've heard today or something that God has been speaking to you about during the week. Are you hearing the voice of Jesus? See, we desperately search and listen for voices to lead us to safety, whether it's during a pandemic or not. There is a voice of one who calls us, who calls to us, a voice filled with authentic love, offering us peace and hope. Let's quiet our souls and our minds to hear the voice of the great shepherd who loves us with unfailing love. Are you listening? Do you need to be reminded that he loves us so much that he wants to protect, that he wants to guard us? Have you entered into the gate? Are you trusting him with your life? I want us to move into a time of communion. On the same night, most likely, where Jesus gave that new command to his disciples, he also gave them a visible image of what this love looks like. And see, by giving them this visible image, by reminding them and telling them to receive this meal, it reminds us of what the great shepherd is willing to do to protect our hearts and our souls. So take a moment, find something that you can use as bread and as juice, and let's prepare our minds and our hearts. You don't have to be a member of our church. Today, if you are interested, if you hear a voice that is calling you and you feel like there's something drawing you to Jesus, it's the voice of Jesus. And he wants you to participate. On the night before he died, he had this meal with his closest followers, his disciples. He took the bread that was there and he blessed it and he gave thanks. And he says, "This is my body that is given for you." In the same way, he took the cup that was there and he blessed it and he gave thanks. He said, "This is my blood that is shed for you." See, Jesus is reminding his followers, he's reminding us how much he loves us. And that he has given us his very life so that we can live at peace with God. We can live the life that God has called us to because Jesus has given us his life. Let's take and remember the body and blood of Jesus given for us today. Let's pray together. God, thank you. Thank you for even giving us a choice to enter into the safety and the protection of a relationship with you. That even in the chaos, even in the unhinged mess, even in the times where life hurts, you still heal. You protect our hope. You protect our faith. You give us love for a better future. God, I pray that we would continue to trust you, that we would live into this love that you have given us. May we be reminders of your love everywhere we go. In your name I pray. Amen.